session of Let Us Talk It ZIPINAR. We named it something new. We have not seen this name before for a reason. We believe in an empowered and informed community, and doing so, we have to do something new. And so we try in putting in the best 1 hour that you will be spending with us, that you get the best out of it. And we definitely have the best intention in mind, having the best speaker in the field or the topic that we choose, ask them to join in, and they so willingly, happily, they join in. Now it's your part of the work that you have to join in, share the link with your friends and family, and so that they can benefit. We never know when that aha moment might come, when that one point that will touch our hearts or mind. So yes, we do this from the Let Us Talk It platform for the community. We are proud of what we do. And if you as a community wants to join our hands, you can do it by emailing us at webinar@letustalkit.com. We'll get back to you. And we don't only stop there. We go with our next generation, our youth. We do let them open up their minds, talk, and get their views out through our youth webinars. We have two groups, younger youth group and older youth group. Younger youth group, we have different prep sessions. They get well prepared and then they go live. And the older youth group, every Saturday, 4 p.m. EST, they also go live. They have proper prep session. And if you want to register your kids, please go to our website, letustalkit.com/youth, and register your kids. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll definitely, we try to make a difference in each one's life. And if you can cooperate also with us, give your feedback, comments, we feel that what we do for the community makes proper sense. So having that being said, we go to the topic today, very internal. The topic is change your mind, create new results using neuroscientific tools, practices, and principles to change your life and business. Very important to get to the depth of it. And to present this topic, we have Judy Hirsch, and she is the founder of Evolution Solutions, a leading authority on cutting-edge training and coaching methodologies, delivering unique solutions that enable her private group and corporate clients to create thriving and high-performing lives, teams, and businesses, company cultures, of course. As a certified neuro change solutions consultant, many of her training power tools are derived from Dr. Joe Dispenza's 25 years of research in neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics. She has a lot. I will give this over to Judy with asking her the question about her background, which is so intriguing. And thank you so much, Judy, for joining in. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jilan. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm very excited and honored to be here with all of you today and to share this life-changing content called Master Your Mind, Master Your Life, the Neuroscience of Change. So I'm just going to jump right in. And you did a great job of introducing me, so I really appreciate that. I don't have much to add other than my company, Evolution Solutions, offers really a multitude of coaching and training solutions. And one of which is most exciting for me, the work that I do as a neuro change solutions consultant, which I'm teaching proprietary neuroscience-based change programs developed by Dr. Joe Dispenza, as has been mentioned. So this entire presentation today is based on the work of Dr. Joe. And there's only about 100 of us worldwide that teach this proprietary system and methodology. So you're going to be privy to some of this content today that very few people in the world have yet seen. So to better understand the quality of the information and the content you're going to be receiving today, I'm just going to do a very brief introduction to Dr. Joe himself. So Dr. Joe is a researcher in the field of quantum physics, epigenetics, and neuroscience. He's a corporate consultant, an international lecturer, an educator, and a best-selling author. And he has spent the last 25 years studying how the brain works, and he's developed models and tools and teachings to focus on how to consciously engage the brain to create and sustain changes that you want to make in your life. And so today, this entire presentation is based on, it's an introduction to a full workshop that I give called Change Your Mind, Create New Results, that Dr. Joe developed for entrepreneurs, for business leaders, for executives, for organizations, both big and small, that are looking to advance in a significant way. You change individuals, you change a culture. So you're going to have the opportunity today to learn some of this groundbreaking content. And here's an overview of what you can expect today. You will learn, just in the short time we have together, how to engage your brain in new ways to both make and sustain changes that could significantly impact yourself and your life and your work. You're going to receive 2 models and 1 tool that are what I call brain hacks for producing better results. And finally, you will learn how to challenge your current thinking patterns and unconscious habits to both minimize stress and produce greater resiliency, productivity, and results. And who doesn't want to do that? I can tell you from personal experience, this work has changed my life. So I'm going to give you everything I can in the 30 minutes that we have together. And for those of you who would like to take this further, to learn more, I'm going to be offering a complimentary one-to-one coaching session for you, also a consultation, but I'll tell you more about that at the end if you're interested. Let's dive in. In order for us to survive and thrive in our personal and professional lives, we have to continue to change and adapt. I think we would all agree, but I don't know how you feel, but for a lot of us, changing is not so easy. In fact, 2020 and up until now has really tested our resiliency. It's been extremely challenging for many, many of us. So think about that. Would you say it's easy for you to change? Well, according to research from McKinsey and Company, which is a worldwide management consulting firm who does a lot of research, they show that 70% of change programs don't reach their stated goals. And this is why sustaining change requires a major reset in mindsets and behaviors, something that few leaders really know how to achieve. And that's why Dr. Joe has developed this content to teach a proven system to reset mindset and behavior using the neuroscience of change. And it's why this approach is very unique and effective. And I'm excited to be sharing it with you today. So do you believe your thoughts influence your own results? I am going to assume that most of you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your outcomes and your results. Well, one of the models that we use to help you understand you in the process of change is the simple idea that your personality literally creates your personal reality, known as your life. So let me unpack that for you. How do you define the personality? Well, your personality is essentially how you think, how you act, and how you feel. This is the beginning of our first model that we teach in the workshop. So here's model 1. Your personality creates your personal reality, which means the personality that's listening to this webinar right now called you has created the personal reality known as your life. And you've done that based on how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And we call that the old self, the known self. So what you've done before essentially has created what you have now, in a simple, stating that simply. But what if you wanted to make some changes to your personal reality, to your life? According to this model, that means you would have to change how you think, how you act, and how you feel to become, first of all, the new self, and that would then create a new personal reality. But most people try to change their lives without changing themselves, and it doesn't work. You can't keep doing the same things the same way, hoping to get different results just by trying harder, right? We're working longer hours, acquiring more knowledge. We end up having more knowledge. We're still not where we want to be, and we're burned out and we're exhausted. And so this is why more than 90% of people who have won the lottery within 3 years are back to the same financial status as they were before they won the lottery, because having money doesn't change your mindset. So the behaviors are, they blow the money until they're right back to where they were before they won the lottery. So this is the way the mind works, and specifically the subconscious mind. And that's why learning the neuroscience of change is necessary if you want to sustain changes. Here's the challenge. The challenge is our brain is a record of the past, essentially, right? 5% of our thoughts, believe it or not, only 5% are conscious. 95% is very unconscious, subconscious. It's Dr. Joe always makes this quote, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, and unconscious habits that essentially function like a computer program. But it makes sense if you understand the neuroscience behind it. I'm going to share that with you. Think of it like this. So here's your brain. Every person, every object, everything that you experience at different times and places is mapped neurologically in your brain. In other words, you have picture this, you have a neurological network in your brain for your work, for your work colleagues, for your boss, your cell phone, for where you work, where you sleep, where you live. For everything that you've seen or done repeatedly, you have one of these neurological networks, and those are like automatic programs. And with that, every one of those things has a memorized emotion associated with it. So everything you see essentially triggers you into your past, and therefore you react in the same way, an automatic way. So you're going to be learning a tool today to consciously remap your brain. Now, most of us don't have a formula for change, right? Let alone a neuroscientific formula. So we're essentially living in our past 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, creating more or less the same results, not getting to that level of success or balance or enjoyment that we really want to have. And so there is a lot of stress happening. And the body actually becomes addicted to not only doing things the same way, but addicted to the hormones of stress. And let me show you the science behind how this happens. When you're feeling any kind of stress, you are producing chemicals in your body like adrenaline, like cortisol, that make you feel stressed. And this happens whether you are literally in danger or whether you're just imagining some kind of worst case scenario, problem or concern or something that's issue that's bothering you. The body reacts the same way. So as you experience stress, you are going to think more stressful thoughts. Why? Because the brain is always monitoring the body chemistry, and it will produce thoughts that are corresponding to the chemistry that it's detecting, if that makes sense. So if it's detecting adrenaline and cortisol, your brain is going to start thinking more stressful thoughts, which will result in more stressful feelings, which trigger even more stressful thoughts. And this is called the thinking and feeling feedback loop. And in this case, it's a very unproductive and unhealthy thinking and feeling feedback loop that most of us are in. This is how we unconsciously condition our bodies to live in and become addicted to stress. So we're either living in one of two states of mind. We're either living in a state of survival, which is living in stress, living in the past, meaning we can only live in the present. When I say living in the past, I mean I'm standing in the present moment, but I'm thinking about, or I'm using my past thinking patterns, and I'm looking at my future, meaning it could be tomorrow or next year. I'm looking at it through the lens of the past patterns of thinking. So I'm continually activating that fight or flight response, and that keeps us stuck in this negative thinking and feeling feedback loop, and we can't change. Now, when you're living in a state of creation, we are living in a regenerative state of flow, of ease. We're in that zone, we're in that creative and productive space because we're living in the present. We're not pulling our past patterns of thinking and unconscious habits forward. We're actually in the present moment. So let me ask you this, or you ask yourself this: where do I spend most of my time? Is it living in survival or is it living in creation? For most of us, we are living in survival. We don't necessarily know that, we don't call it that, but until we learn the neuroscience of how to change, most of us are living in survival. And when you learn to move from living in survival to living in creation, you experience an entirely new level of life. You have this peace of mind, you have a level of productivity, level of success that's generated both personally and professionally. And for me, it's thrilling to see the shifts in my clients, whether they're one-to-one clients or groups or organizations, where you see a whole culture start to shift. Can you imagine that? working around people where they're living in a state of flow and productivity and engagement and creativity every day. It's hard to imagine that. It's like a completely different world. And it's hard to imagine that because studies also show 70% of the time people are living in stress. And this statistic was before the pandemic. So the problem is stress shuts down the creative or the higher centers of the brain, and it activates the very primitive part of the brain, that fight or flight. And we go into this kind of self-preservation mode. And we don't even know it because it just feels normal. We're so used to doing that, but that's not a time to create, right? If our body's in fight or flight, it's not a time to create or innovate or collaborate. So we're not at our best because our body is primed to do one of three things: run, fight, or hide. Okay, on just a very visceral level, that's what's going on. And so our brain performance is diminished, and planning and decision-making abilities are impaired, whether we realize it or not. Our memory is not as good. We have lack of impulse control. We may lose our tempers easily. Diminished critical and abstract thinking. We may be less creative and innovative, less productive and focused, less collaborative and communicative. And that's what happens within ourselves, within our teams, within our organizations. When the brain is incoherent, meaning firing out of sync, we're incoherent. We're in emergency mode. And our performance is diminished. And again, we may not realize that. We may think we're doing great, but we don't realize how much better we could be doing if we were not operating from the stress zone. And think about it. You can't change when you're in this high beta brainwave state. You know, this is not the way the body changes. The body operates on a priority basis. So if the body believes it's just trying to survive, it's not a time to change or innovate, right? That's not a priority. Have you ever tried to change somebody's mind who's frustrated or upset or sad or depressed? Not going to happen. It doesn't work. So just to summarize what we know. Number one, we talked about this. Your personality, which is how you think, how you act, and how you feel, creates your personal reality, also known as your life. So to change our results means to change ourselves. The challenge is, though, number two here, that 95% of our personality is already programmed. So we're operating in autopilot and we're living from past conditioning. And third, we're living in stress 70% of the time. So we know that we can't change when we're living in stress. So we have all of these factors that are challenging us from evolving and stepping into our greater potential. So what can you do? What can you do if you want to facilitate change to advance yourself as a leader, as a parent, as a spouse, or for your business or your organization? So you can learn the second model in our workshop called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. The second model is about how to change. And here's the second model. First of all, let me ask you a question, or I'd like you to think about this. Human beings think about 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. On average, what percentage of those thoughts do you think are repetitive, are the same every day? About 90%. That's a lot, right? We don't really think about it, but it's a lot. So if you're ready for change, we need to do something different, because the same thinking is going to lead you to make the same kind of choices. The same choices are going to cause you to take the same actions. The same actions are going to lead to the same outcomes and experiences. The same experiences are going to result in feeling the same. And if you don't want life to change a whole lot, you will live on the left side of the model. But if you're ready for change, you want it, and that next level of success, then it's time to learn how to engage your brain in entirely new ways and create new thinking. So this is where the course that I teach and coach is so important, or learning the neuroscience of change is so important, because new thoughts lead to new choices, right? New choices are going to lead you to behave differently. New behaviors will result in new experiences, which will then produce new feelings, and you will continue to be thinking and evolving. This is the right side of the model, is called evolution. And I'll give you a personal story. When I was working in the pharmaceutical industry for many years, I was a corporate trainer. And I noticed a job opening came up in the project management office. And I thought, and this is when I was living on the left side of the model. And I thought that would be interesting, but I don't have any experience in that. They probably wouldn't even consider me. So I just stayed on the left side of the model that year in my corporate training role. Nothing really, my life didn't change a whole lot. But after that, a year later, when another opening came up in the project management office, I had already started studying these neuroscientific principles and started to learn how to think and open my mind to new ways of thinking and choice making. And so I made a new choice this time, and I decided I'm going to interview for that position. I interviewed for the job. I got the job. The first assignment, this is a true story, was over in France, Normandy, France. So I moved to over in France, and you bet I had new experiences. I had completely about new feelings about myself, about what I was capable of doing, about life. And I continued to think in new ways. So how do we do this? You know, how do we get ourselves to think in new ways? I'm going to share with you today something that a tool that will really help you to move in that direction, that will really open up doors for you. But to get there, I have to give you your first official lesson in neuroscience. It's going to match the background that I have behind me right now. And this is called the Hebbian law of repetition. And this law says nerve cells that fire together wire together, and nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. You know, more commonly called something like use it or lose it. So essentially, if you keep thinking the same thoughts, they are going to wire together. If you keep doing the same things, you are wiring your brain for those same things. If you keep reacting emotionally to the same problems and conditions in your life, you're wiring your brain equal to those reactions. So you and I essentially hardwire our brains into a finite pattern that then becomes our identity. And we say things like, well, that's just the way I am. That's just who I am. But what if you wanted to change? Can you disconnect from the old wiring, from unwanted patterns? And what if you've been doing something for 20, 30, 40 or more years? Yes, you absolutely can. You can change. And my answer isn't just my answer. It's based on years and years and years of meticulous research and outcome in neuroscience. So let me share with you a little bit more about this. It's mainly due to something called neuroplasticity. Some of us have heard of what that is. It's the ability of the brain to both form and reorganize synaptic connections in response to learning. Because of that, because the brain is very plastic to the way that we think, we can change. We can break old connections to our old ways of being. We can make new connections to a new way of being. And we can literally hardwire that new self in my model one I showed you earlier. We can hardwire that into place. But how do you do that? Okay, I know we have 30 minutes, but I'm going to give you as much as I can. Here is an introduction to the mind. This will help you to understand the how. So I did mention earlier that 5% of our thoughts are conscious, but 95% of our thoughts are subconscious. So most of the way we interact with our environment is quite subconscious, from our automatic reactions and conditioned responses and so on. But what's the barrier? This is important to see here. The barrier between the conscious and the subconscious mind prevents us, what this blue line is, I'll tell you in a minute, but this prevents us from getting into the subconscious mind and rewiring those automatic programs. And that's why most of us are stuck in our 5% of our mind trying to force ourselves to change and wondering why it doesn't last. Well, you have to go into the automatic programs and change at the source, if that makes sense. So what do you think this barrier is that keeps us from getting into the subconscious mind? I'm giving you a moment to ponder that before I give you the answer. That little thing in the way, that doorway that's shut for most of us most of the time, is called the analytical mind. Now, love the analytical mind. I need it. We all need it. But when it comes to making change and rewiring the subconscious mind, we can't be engaging it. And that at that time, we can't be engaging it. So that's why diets and new exercise routines and willing ourselves to be, different, more productive or more patient doesn't have a lasting effect. So to get in, we have to be able to transcend the analytical mind at certain times so that we can get into the subconscious and permanently overwrite some of those automatic programs that are not helpful in advancing us in our lives. So I'm going to give you a power tool that will help you to access your subconscious mind so you can rewire it and make some real changes in your life that are lasting. This power tool is called mental rehearsal. It is a form of meditation, a very specific way to use meditation in your life. This is a tool that will help you achieve peak performance and results in any area of your life. Here are some personal examples of how you can advance yourself. And here are some organizational examples. These are taken from our clients that have worked with this and have had profound shifts in their lives. So let me walk you through this process. So a brief introduction to brainwave states is helpful in understanding how to do this. So I'm just going to give you a very high level overview. So we talked about getting into the subconscious. Well, beta brainwave state. So these are the 4 basic brainwave states: beta, alpha, theta, delta. As you can see here, beta and alpha are in the realm of the conscious mind, circled in green. We're all in beta right now, most likely. And then alpha, theta, delta are in the subconscious realm. So our goal then is to move from beta to alpha. And as you move through these from beta to delta, you are slowing the brain waves down. So in order for you to enter your own subconscious mind, you have to slow your brain waves down. To do that, there are 3 main steps. First is to reduce sensory input, which usually involves closing your eyes. So you reduce all the stimuli from outside of you. So closing your eyes and then slowing and deepening your breathing. So you move out of fight or flight. If I'm deepening my breath, I'm slowing my breath. Thirdly, and this is where you get into the mental rehearsal part. Once you're in your subconscious mind, because you've reduced your sensory input, you've slowed your breathing, now you're in alpha state, a very creative state where your inner world is more real than your outer world. And now you can start to visualize who you want to be or the outcomes you want to create. And you start to mentally rehearse. Now, professional athletes already know how to do this, but this is something we're going to use for benefiting our lives. And you're now training your brain, which makes new connections in your brain, and it produces new body chemistry. So there's a whole cascade of events that happen physiologically when you engage in this in the proper way. Here's a study. This study was published in the 1995 edition of the Journal of Neurophysiology, and this illustrates the power of this mental rehearsal process. So I'll give you a brief overview. There were 2 main groups. Neither group had ever played the piano before. The first group, or the physical practice group, were taught how to do something like one-handed scales, essentially, with their right hand. And they were taught how to do it, and then they were told they needed to practice 2 hours a day for 5 days. And they did a brain scan before the study, and they did a brain scan after the study. That was the physical practice group. The mental rehearsers were shown how to do one-handed scales, not allowed to touch the piano. They had to observe it. Then they had to close their eyes, sit in front of the piano, visualize themselves doing one-handed scales with their right hand 2 hours a day for 5 days, and even imagine hearing the sound of the piano as they were doing this. They did a brain scan before and a brain scan after, and this is what they found. The physical practice group over the 5 days increased the activity in that part of the brain. And that's not unusual. You learn something new, you make new connections, there's more activity in that part of the brain. What was interesting was the next group, the mental rehearsers, over the 5 days, they increased the activity in their brain almost exactly the same way the physical practice group did. So the changes in their brain were physically just about the same. The control group, there was no change. So what do these results mean for you and for me in terms of changing our lives? A lot. So let me just give you the summary of this. It means that we can physically change our brains from thought alone. That's powerful, knowing that, because the body doesn't know the difference between an experience created by our thoughts and an experience created by some event in our external lives. It's all the same to the body. So think about the implications of that knowledge. If you want to become a better leader, a more resilient, more collaborative, or to build more resilient collaborative teams in your organization, if you want to be more productive, less reactive, whatever it is that you want to take to the next level, this is your power tool. So I'm going to share with you very briefly my own case study about how I used this in my life to change a particular experience I was having. So here's my case study. When I was told you about becoming a project manager, my first assignment was over in France with this major this company I was working for. They had a manufacturing plant in France that had been cited by the local health authority for hundreds of breaches and regulations. That was my first assignment. So we had limited resources and very tight timelines. And if all the issues weren't resolved by the deadline that regulatory agency gave us, our facility would be shut down. So talk about stress and pressure that I felt. It was a tough assignment to be given. So I met with my project teams, and I would be in high beta brainwave state, very stressed, talking obsessively about deadlines and risks and fears and problems of this team member not meeting their deadlines and affecting the other team members. So I was communicating all of my worry, my anxiety, my fear, my lack of trust in their ability to deliver, right, all over the team. And this picture really captures the mood of our initial meetings. And then it occurred to me, this is a perfect opportunity to apply mental rehearsal, because I had just started learning this. So what I did was, I'll walk you through this so you can do this as well. First of all, I became aware of my subconscious programs. I thought about it, what was going through my head day in and day out. It was things like this I put up on the screen here. Well, what if I fail? I'm not sure I can do this. I'm a new project manager. The plant could be shut down. The people could lose their jobs, and it's going to be my fault. I'll have to live with this failure, right? So this is what's going through my head. And so what I needed to do was get out of that beta brainwave state and go into alpha. So I started my day every day, and I moved into this meditative state using mental rehearsal, slowing my brainwaves down, moving into alpha. And then once I was in alpha brainwave state, I would start to fire and wire new thoughts. How did I want to feel? How did I want to speak to my team? What kind of results did I want to experience? And so I started to feel differently. And I started to integrate that into my way of being, my way of communicating. So that process moved me, as it says here in step 3, from living in a state of survival and stress to living in a state of creation. So I was reconditioning, literally, physiologically changing my brain and body. So this wasn't a fake it till you make it. This was, I'm actually changing myself, my connections in my brain, the chemistry in my body. So I was much more at ease. My communication to my team was much different. I communicated trust. I created an environment where people felt safer communicating new ideas. And so I was a much better leader, and I was able to inspire and activate the best in my team. So long story short, we started to operate very coherently and effectively as a team. And step by step, that story started to get much better. This project got much better, and we ended up being victorious. We had a huge success. Fast forward to the end, we met our deadlines. The citation on that plant was lifted. We had a big celebration before we went back to the US. And this could have very easily ended in disaster, right? With people losing their jobs, including me, the plant shutting down, and me having that burden for the rest of my life. That's how important, that's how powerful a tool like mental rehearsal is to have in your toolkit. Wouldn't you like to have something like that? So using that effectively can change your life in any area of life, personal or professional. So I want to share that with you, and I'll leave you with that story because it's so powerful. And again, I go deeper into this in the workshop that I teach, and also in the one-to-one coaching that I give. So I just want to give you an opportunity here, because I said at the beginning, if those of you are interested in learning more about this for yourselves, an individual, for your company, or for your organization, feel free to reach out to me. You can schedule a complimentary one-to-one coaching session for yourself. You can also schedule with me this webinar. I can bring this webinar to your business or an organization that you belong to. I'm happy to share this webinar. And if at some point, if you're interested in the entire workshop, that's something I can also offer too. But feel free to take a picture of my contact details. This QR code here will enable you to book a strategy session with me. So will this link here. Or you can just send me a text message or an email and get in touch that way. It was a real pleasure to be able to share this content with you. You can see, I'm very excited about it. It's changed my life, and I would love to have this transferred to you to be able to change your life in any way that's important to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy.
Thank
That was a wonderful presentation. It was an excellent topic. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So appreciate it.
Do we have any questions? Panelists, attendees? Vamshi, do we have any questions in the social media platform?
Yeah, Judy, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, the pearls of wisdom on how to really, get back to the results that we always want. So yeah, so do you have, more techniques and more tools?
Yes.
That's what. Okay.
Yeah, that's one. In the full workshop, there are 4 tools and 2 models. So there's a whole lot more, but this is a key one. And in 30 minutes, I want to give one of the key ones to share with the audience, but there's a lot more in the full workshop.
Right, and how does it, is meditation also included in some of the aspects of the tools?
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, mental rehearsal, if I had more time, I would explain, it is a form of meditation. So it's a specific way to meditate. And in the workshop and in the teachings, there are specific meditations that are designed to help you get into your subconscious mind and do a reprogramming process to help you change your life. So it's very powerful. And it's all based on neuroscience. And Dr. Joe has been teaching this formally more than 10 years. His research goes back 25 years, but we've been teaching this for 10 years, more than 10 years. So we've got this, and we've been working with Google and Microsoft and IBM and Pfizer and, Cisco and major corporations around the world, as well as people that have their own business, just one person, so from one individuals to major corporations, we've been able to make profound shifts in how people live their lives and do business.
Yeah, did you explore what we call as mantras, mantras in, from Indian Vedic wisdom?
I'm very familiar with that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And so, is your question, is that part of this?
No. I mean, it's a general question.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely know about that. It's excellent. It's different than the way that we use this meditation, but thank you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I'll stop my
Thank you
share.
again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? If not, we can move on to the next topic. Our next topic is security versus safety layers. This talk will compare the use of security layers in a network to vehicle safety systems and how different failures can affect outcomes. This will be presented by James Byerly. James is owner and principal consultant for Secure Point Solutions, a cybersecurity firm based in Iowa, specializing in small and medium businesses. He has an extensive background in the managed services space and frequently advises other information technology companies on how to improve security offerings. James holds certifications through ISC2 and a degree in information technology. James, we are very happy to have you here. We are looking forward for a great session. Over to you, James.
Yes, thank you. If you could turn on my camera, hopefully you can see my slides already, but camera might come in handy too.
Can you try now?
Yeah, let me try that again. Oh, hey, there you go. All right, so if you can see me and hear me, well, I'm sorry. So thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to speak here for this group. And also just awesome job by our first speaker, Judy. That was great. Talking about mentally preparing. I was sitting here like, I'm going to mentally prepare one more time before we get started. So figured I would start living this new process. So we're going to talk about the safety versus security layers. And we're going to do this sort of talking about cybersecurity, computer security, and also we're going to talk about car safety, because for the most part, everybody here will understand what goes into making a car safe or what things go into it. Everything, in my opinion, is better with layers. Cakes are better with layers. Lasagna is better with layers. Burritos are better with layers. So safety and security, those should probably follow suit as well. So before we delve into the differences primarily of safety or security, we're going to first talk about the gaps that happen inside layers. So this is commonly known as the Swiss cheese method or Swiss cheese theory. And and simply states that any hazard, any risk that is able to pass through every layer will then create an incident, create some sort of harm on the other side. Whereas a hazard that gets through one or more layers but is eventually stopped, those are the ones that never create harm, never create an incident. You can also say that a layer could actually be the difference between an accident or a security incident being really bad versus just it being a minor incident. And we'll kind of delve into that as we break down the differences and talk a little more about layers. So first we'll talk about the safety side. So this here is kind of a car that I have goals of obtaining one day. So and it's an Audi. Audis are known for having safe vehicles. They're known for having a lot of safety features. So first off, we're going to talk about the purpose of safety. Now, there's a lot of reasons that a lot of reasons for safety. I broke these down into two very simple terms. First, reduce risk to life. Prior to going into IT, I was in the military, and somebody I worked with said that safety, the point of safety was to keep the blood inside the body. And I think that's a very accurate statement. I think that's a good way to think about it. Reducing risk to life. So cars are designed that if you get in an accident, you hopefully can walk away from it with bumps, bruises, scratches, you know, scared to death, but you walk away from it. Those you know, cars have gotten safer. Accidents have you know, more accidents have kind of been avoided just because of the just because of some of the safety features, lane departure, adaptive cruise control. I'm not going to get into like a lot of those. We're going to talk about just some more of the common parts. And then the other purpose to safety is reduce property damage. And that's the damage to the vehicle, damage to another vehicle, damage to buildings, whatever is involved. So what things make this car safe? So I have three things here. First, the systems that are inside of it. And we're going to talk about those. The testing that goes into it. Probably everybody has seen commercials or videos of them slamming cars into walls, and there's the mannequins inside it, the crash test dummies, and they pull the crash test dummy out, and they look at them and say, yeah, he'd still be alive. Or they do braking tests, all sorts of testing that goes into these vehicles to ensure that they are safe, and ensure that those features work when they are needed. And then the other part is training. So what are we talking about with the training? Well, you are required to learn how to drive. You don't just get to hit a certain age that you can reach the pedals and the steering wheel and see over the window and they say, good job, here's your keys. You have to go through some sort of training. I learned here how to drive in the United States, but then I worked in Japan and I was required to learn. And I was grateful because with the steering wheel and everything else being on the other side, the driving on the other side of the road, the signs being different, I was grateful for that training because this was all new to me. And a fun thing about cars in Japan, even a small van to haul around 10, 15 people has fun paddle shifters and kind of makes you feel like you're driving something sporty. So systems, the testing, the training are all those things that are put into it to make it safe. So safety layers. We will talk about these. We'll kind of go top left and work our way around to understand these. So the first one here is a bumper. The black thing in the upper left, that is the bumper. The bumper is actually designed to lessen the damage to a vehicle when it hits something at a lower speed. If you didn't have your bumper, your car would hit and you would break things that are important. Your radiator, your headlights, possibly damage the engine, things like that. So just like bumper cars, if you've ridden around in a bumper car and bumped into each other, those bumpers are there to ensure that it's fun and not overly hurtful. So that is part of that protecting property, to minimizing the damage to property. Not so much helpful to keeping the person safe, although the bumper does have some use there as well. So the next safety feature there at the bottom left is seatbelt. So seatbelts have been around for quite a while. Here in the US, we're required to wear them or you face a ticket from law enforcement. And that is definitely a layer designed to keep a person safe. Same thing at the top there. Those are your airbags. Now, this vehicle has numerous airbags to protect your legs, to protect your head, your chest. Older cars had just the single airbag in the front. But as they've learned more about crashing, again, through testing, as they've learned through testing, they've determined that these are the spots that we need airbags. Some cars even also include airbags from the top so that if the car rolls over, those airbags go off as well. So, and then the final one there is, it's not my favorite layer of safety, but it's the speed limit. So this one, 70 miles an hour. So I think that works out to about 110 kilometers per hour, if I remember. So that's speed limit sign. So that is a policy. That's a law, a rule. So that is there to help create a layer of safety. So they tell you, you should not drive over that speed. And if you do so, you can be fined, ticketed. If you exceed that speed way too much, you could actually be arrested. So the idea to this is it's sort of a policy control. So if you get into an accident and they are able to determine that you were not only speeding, but you were the cause of the accident, those damages, the legal damages, the civil damages, those can actually increase, because now not only did you cause an accident, you were acting irresponsible. So that is an area, and as we get into the security, where we'll really kind of look at that area of irresponsibility, of not following guidelines, whether those are guidelines you have yourself or guidelines that are mandated by the government or your industry. And other controls that would go into this. Some cars are designed that they'll have another key, that key will lock out certain features. Usually you would give that to, if you had a teenager who's learning to drive, you would give them that key, which would turn off certain features. A car that's more high performance, it would actually limit the engine's ability to run full speed. So those are just some of the safety layers. Now we're going to talk about going back to that Swiss cheese model. If we take away a layer, so we'll say, let's take away the bumper. And we kind of talked about this before. So you get an accident, you don't have a bumper. Your car is going to be damaged further than it would have been, whether that accident was high speed, low speed, somewhere in between. Without the bumper, you now will experience more damage to the vehicle. You likely will not experience any difference in hurting yourself or others in the vehicle, because you still have seatbelts, you still have airbags, and any other safety feature that's inside the car. There's things like crumple zones, and we could talk just about safety features for cars and go a lot longer than half an hour. So take away the bumper, you're probably okay. No big harm. Now, if we took away the airbag, for example, Well, now that the airbags are gone, you get into an accident. Okay, bumper does its job. The seatbelt's going to do its job, but you are going to likely come away more hurt with worse injuries than had you been with airbags and a seatbelt. And vice versa. If you aren't wearing your seatbelt and you get in an accident and your airbags go off, you may still walk away from it, but you will likely suffer injuries that you would not have if you were also buckled. Now, if I take away two of these layers, such as the airbag and the seatbelt, depending on the speed, you likely will suffer serious bodily harm or just be outright killed. These safety features were designed to keep that from happening. And then same thing with the speed limit. If you take away the speed limits, accidents will, may increase. The velocity of accidents may increase, meaning because cars are going way faster, they're hitting at with harder force and starting to weaken these safety layers. Okay. So we'll jump ahead here into our security. So what's the purpose of security? And again, a lot of different purposes, a lot of different reasons to have security. Top two things I put here: reduce critical system downtime. So a critical system might be a water plant, a gas pipeline. Obviously, those two things have been in the news recently here in the United States. Other systems, hospitals. Recently the hospital system in Ireland was degraded or knocked offline due to ransomware attack. The British health system was damaged due to WannaCry years ago. So critical system downtime, things that are needed to help with life. If you think about like say a natural gas pipeline or a power grid, in extreme cold, the power grid or natural gas would actually put people at risk if they are unable to heat their home. In the summer months, if you don't have power and it's extremely hot, you may get sick. You may, there is a risk of death, especially to people who are vulnerable, the elderly, young children, people who are compromised in some way already. So the loss of power, loss of that infrastructure. And then the other purpose really here, reduce the data loss or damage to the integrity of the data. So data loss would just be an attacker stealing that data and trying to use it for purposes of selling it. And then damage to the integrity would be an attacker going in and deleting files, encrypting files, doing something that would affect the ability for them to be read and also affect the actual contents of them. So what makes this network secure? Well, again, it's systems. So it's the applications, the tools that are used. It's testing. It's testing when an application is being written. It's testing when that application is put forward, from a security standpoint. It's testing for vulnerabilities. It's performing penetration testing, areas such as that. And then also training. So that training comes into user training, so that they're aware of those threats, email threats, phishing, those kind of things. Training for your technical staff, knowing how to respond to an incident, how to operate their tools properly to help maintain the network. So again, as we talked about safety layers, there are numerous security layers. And I felt it best we would focus on just four, that these are easiest to understand no matter what your background is. So the first one is the endpoint protection. So endpoint protection is just something that's installed to your computer or your server to look for viruses and other malicious activities. So this would be your antivirus, your endpoint detection, response. There's a variety of tools that kind of fall under that endpoint protection. Okay. Next, your perimeter protection. those are things like your firewalls, your proxy servers, things that are designed to protect you from the outside to attackers trying to get in. Then you have application protection. In this case, I was going to pick on email filtering. Email filters are designed to catch those messages that are spam or phishing, contain malicious attachments. And then finally, much like the safety side, there are policies, regulations, guidelines, procedures. Those, as I said, could be at a business level, where a business will say, you are not allowed to go to Facebook on your computer. Okay, that would just be a business level policy, or a federal policy, or something along the lines of like HIPAA, where you must protect patient information if you are a covered entity, or somewhere in between. PCI, which is your your credit card guidelines. Credit card guidelines would say you must do certain things related to this. So again, all these layers are designed to work together. And as you remove a layer, you suddenly create larger amounts of risk. You can create greater impacts, and you can affect your ability to recover, to maintain security. So we'll use as an example here, if your email filter is offline, someone misconfigured it, and the email filter is no longer catching spam, phishing, malicious attachments. So an email comes into a user, that user clicks on it because maybe they haven't had the training. Again, that's kind of another layer of its own. The user clicks on it, and an attachment inside there actually starts to try to spin off a malware. Maybe tries to launch ransomware or some other type of attack. The endpoint protection may catch it and contain it. The perimeter protection may block the ability for that malicious software to call back to a command and control server and effectively stop it right there. So the email came in like it shouldn't have, but it was stopped. So but then if we take this a step farther, and if you said, well, the endpoint protection also failed, then this is a much different scenario where now that endpoint protection is gone, and that same malicious attachment now could move at least within that computer. If other computers are still running their endpoint protection correctly, then you can stop, then those computers themselves would likely be protected against malware moving from one computer over to another. So all of these and policies and regulations, again, we talked about this. If you don't follow policies, regulations, guidelines, the risks to the what can happen if it's, don't go to Facebook on the company computer and you go to Facebook. Well, you could be disciplined by the company. You could be terminated if there's been enough of a problem. If you violate HIPAA and your patient data leaks out, you could face fines, various things like that. So we've talked about safety layers, we've talked about security layers, and we've talked about how if one layer it fails, you have the ability to still maintain your damage isn't maybe as great, your risk to the safety or security is not as great. There's one area that both of these have in common, and that's disaster recovery and insurance. So disaster recovery, if we are talking about that in the area of a vehicle safety, that's your repair. So you get in an accident, your bumper is bent, so you go to a repair shop and they have the means to repair that part of the car. I almost said computer. They can repair your car. Your insurance likely helps to fix that as well. Your insurance kicks in, they pay the repair place, and you get your car back restored. in a computer or security situation, your disaster recovery would be used to turn off, or sorry, to restore a server that has been hit with ransomware, restore a location that's actually been hit with severe weather. You know, we've talked about security from the standpoint of security, of keeping the bad guys out, but a lot of disasters can affect computers in the same way. If you have a tornado, a hurricane, typhoon, earthquake, even a fire, all of those things can affect a computer network the same way as an attacker. So it may be necessary for you to turn these systems on in another location. And then also your insurance on both sides of this is to recover financially. So if your company is affected by this, you had to shut down for a number of days due to a ransomware incident, your insurance will step in and help to fix that. Also, if you had victims, so if there was a data breach, insurance can help to sign people up for credit monitoring, to handle the notification so that they can send out those letters to say, hey, your data has been breached, your security is very important to us, but we're sorry, here's a year's worth of free credit monitoring, sign up here. So, and then on the car side, insurance would also make people whole. So if you got into an accident and you were found at fault, that insurance would then make the repairs on their vehicle, make the cover medical bills, anything like that from an accident. So this is just kind of a part of some of the things I talk about. Making people understand how security layers and safety layers, how they relate to each other, and the importance to actually have layers is a big piece of what I do. As mentioned, I own Secure Point Solutions here in Iowa in the United States, and I look for those gaps. I look for those missing layers. I look for those holes when the layers line up in a certain way, and I start thinking about, well, how does an attacker make use of this? So my contact information is here. If you have questions, if you are interested in some further conversations around this, if you want some consultations about security for your own business, I'm happy to sit down with you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was an informative session. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions from the panelists, attendees? Any questions on the social media platform?
I got a quick question.
Yeah,
Do
please.
you recommend storing the passwords within the browser?
No, I do not. There's often ways of those passwords getting pulled out of the browser. If you are looking to store passwords, use a separate password manager. LastPass, KeePass, there's a variety of them, but browser-based passwords are on again and off again insecure. Just when a browser, somebody discovers a vulnerability, and then you have to make sure that you've patched that browser. So I do not recommend storing them to that. Now, that being said, how you store your passwords is also dependent on how important that password is to you. So if it's something very simple that if somebody got into and you're not worried about the impact, then maybe that's an okay risk. But if you're going to use password management, just use one secure location for all of them.
Thank you, James.
Any other questions?
All right.
Okay. Judy had to leave a couple of minutes back, so she had some client meeting. But once again, from the LetUsTalkIt team, I would like to thank Judy and James for the wonderful session. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And before we end, I would like to let you all know that we have our live youth Let Us Talk It youth webinar every Saturday at 4 p.m. EST. And this week topic is youth summer vacation plans and ideas. You can join the prep sessions every Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30 p.m. EST by registering at our website letustalkit.com/youth. And this week we also have the younger youth webinar, and the topic is favorite quotes. Yeah, so I would also like to thank all the panelists and the attendees here. If we don't have any other questions, then maybe we can wind up.
Thank you, team.
Thank you. Thank you all.